Okay, so talking of the Romans,
Yeah.
why do you think the British were so difficult to conquer?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. For Julius Caesar, they were difficult because they had a really good leader at that time, Caswallon,
Yes.
or Cassivellaunus, as he
Yeah.
calls him, who was the high king of the. They would elect someone to be the high king leader. They had lots of kings in different places. But in times of trouble, they'd elect someone to be like that. The Romans used to do the same, actually. In times of trouble, they would elect an imperator,
Right.
an imperator who'd had total power for a year to do everything, because it was a time of danger in warfare. And that's how the emperor began. It was the imperator was the
right.
emperor.
Yeah.
So Augustus became an imperator, but he just continued it on, passed it on. So that's how Rome got its sort of quasi-royal, status again.
So,
having got rid of their kings originally.
We would have called Harvey Ragus High King of Britain, wouldn't we?
Yes, I think so. Well, he'd have been Pendragon, actually.
Right, yeah.
That's what the title would have been, or certainly was a bit later. But it's that equivalent. And later on, you had people like Aethelstan, who was the Saxon king.
Alfred the Great's son?
Grandson? Son or grandson?
Grandson, I think.
He was Brett Wallader, leader of Britain, and took an army and defeated the Scots. He was trying to reunite the whole kingdom.
Yes, that was Alfred's dream, wasn't it?
Anyway, cut a long story short, I had a good look at all those manuscripts, and so I did do my homework.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Adrian, are you still in agreement with your co-authors Wilson and Blackett that the Trojan War took place more recently than previously thought, and if so, can you give your reasons?
Yeah, I do believe that. There's another very good book called Centuries of Darkness, Peter James, and he makes a very, very good point. Actually, it was a bunch of authors working together. I got a copy upstairs, Alan gave me. But the archaeologists, the chronology of the Near East was worked out by Flinders Petrie based on pottery in Egypt and the king lists of Egypt. And they decided that must therefore apply to the whole area. So they found similar pottery to what they had in Egypt. They said, well, that must be from that time. So this is all relying on the reliability of the Egyptian king lists, which are not reliable, Manetho, because it's very clear now, to some people anyway, that some of these king lists are so shown as before and after, when they should be in parallel, different parts of Egypt.
Right, okay.
Because periodically the northern part of Egypt and the southern part would be separate.
Yes.
So you'd have two dynasties ruling at the same time. But
is that Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt? Yeah.
Yeah, north and south. Upper Egypt is actually south, because their map was upside down because the Nile flows downwards from there. So that's upper, going down to Lower Egypt. Anyway, so that put a spanner in the works. The archaeologists decided that there must have been a dark age in the Bronze Age. They call it the Bronze Age Dark Age, which can be as much as 700 years. And the funny thing is, and Peter James goes into this, that you have them going in, the Mycenaeans people going into before the Bronze Age Dark Age. Then there's a Dark Age, then they come out into what we would call classical Greece. And they're still speaking the same language, they're still wearing the same kind of clothes, they're still wearing the same kind of hairstyles, recognisably Greek. And yet there's been this big gap. You would have thought things would have changed during the interim, especially as there had been a gap, a Dark Age.
Yes.
So it's a total invention. So Alan, and I agree with him, would say that they've got the dating completely wrong. for the Mycenaeans and people.
Yeah.
It's much more recent than that.
Yeah.
It's only a generation or two before the classical period, you had that going on. So that's how you had Homer, talking about the Trojan War. It had maybe even happened in his lifetime, or maybe his father's, or very close. Wasn't something that happened 700 years previously.
Yeah, yeah.
So I agree with him on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about has there been more than one Trojan War? Because some people will say that there was a Trojan War in this country, a Trojan Empire that took place, that was situated in Cambridgeshire on the Gog-Magog Hills.
Yes, I know. I've heard this. Well, you've got to remember that the Trojans, or the Britons, claimed to have come from Troy.
From Brutus, yeah.
And they would apply names to places that, just like New York is named after our York.
Yes.
And you go to America and all sorts of places, Manchester, this, Birmingham,
Boston,
that, Boston, Texas, Boston, all of these place names that, they hadn't got the imagination to work one out for themselves.
Sorry if anyone's watching from America.
Well, they probably came from those places, so they gave the name of where they come from, or they liked. So you can imagine that going on in Britain, but I do believe that. Now I've told you about the Triangle Land, haven't I?
Yep.
And I showed you Julius Caesar describes Britain as being shaped like a triangle, and if you look at Troad in Turkey. It's a peninsula on the northwest, and have a look on a map and you'll see it is actually an equilateral triangle.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
With Dardania at the top, you got going down to the sea, and then you've got the Gulf of Edremit, I think it's called Adramitium, is in there, and it's actually a triangle. So I believe the name Troad actually means triangle land.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And I believe they called Britain the New Triangle Land.
Right, okay.
Troia Nuith,
Yes.
or Trinovantum.
Okay.
London was called London, but it was also the capital of Trinovantum,
Yes.
or Troyad.
New Troy.
New
Yeah.
Troy.
Yeah.
Trinovantum, being the city of Troy, New Troy,
Yeah.
in the new land of Troy.
Yeah.
So, everything about the old Britons was to do with threes, wasn't it?
Yes,
They
of
love
course.
threes.
Yeah.
Three this, three that, three
That's
the
the
other.
magic druid number, isn't it? Yeah.
Arwen symbol, three, shadows cast by the rock. So I believe that is the truth.
Okay.
Um,
It's very plausible, if you
Yes.
ask me. It's a very interesting theory. Thank you.